finish a fight and you're like with your wife or your spouse, your husband, you're like, what in the world are we just fighting about? Like, what just I was standing in the kitchen once and we were having one of those moments. And I was looking at my wife, she's looking at me, and like, what just happened? What were we just arguing about? How did we get to this place? Right. And she was talking, her recount of that situation is she said, my arms were animated. I don't think they were animated, but that was her perspective on the situation. But here's the deal. It's not so much the conflict. Now, I get it. It's important to know how to manage conflict, how to go into conflict, but more important than actually managing your conflict is how you reprocess the conflict after the actual fight, after the actual engagement. This is the game changer between marriages that are very connected, very intimately involved, mentally, spiritually, and really reflect God in the home and into the world around. It's how you process the marriage. So give a couple techniques here of how you actually get in here and do this. I'm gonna share some things. We have the 5 transformational stages of communication. We hit this in depth. If you want the rundown, it's an hour-long rundown. Click in the link down below, and I'll email it over to you. You can actually watch the entire detailed breakdown. We're not doing that now, so relax. We're hitting startup, response, body. We're gonna hit understanding, okay? Because this guy right here, that guy right there is the hardest one to actually to do because it requires you to step outside of yourself and into your spouse and acknowledge 3 things. Ready for this? I'm just gonna get it out of the way now. Here's what you got to acknowledge. You have to step into their world. You have to validate their world, and you have to I know some are like, "Oh my goodness, let me swipe right now." No, hold on. Let me talk to you about this and why it's so important. And it's important to make an agreement before you go into here to say, "Hey, even though I'm gonna do these things, it doesn't mean I agree or that I don't have a different perception on the world, on validation and accepting." But what you're trying to do in the understanding piece, after you've worked your way down the other steps there, is you're actually stepping in and saying, "Hey, given your world, what I know about your world, what you've experienced in your world, given those, I could understand why you would think, believe, or say XYZ." Now, I'm not talking about things such as abuse and destructive behavior. I'm not talking about that now. So use your common sense here. But in most of our conversations, most of our arguments, you get to this place where you need to step into their world and say, given your upbringing, giving what I know about you, that's valid what you were feeling. All right. It's valid that you would actually think the way that you're not crazy, right? That is this portion here. And accepting, now this is where it gets tough for people like me. uh, Being able to actually say, I accept that we have a different view here. We have a different take. Now you're not at the problem solving space yet, okay? So you have to be able to release some of that tension and be like, I can actually accept where you are in the world, your thoughts. I may not agree, but I can step into your world and say, okay, given your upbringing, giving the way that you view things, I see why you would say that. I validate it. Hey, you're not crazy. You're not just out there somewhere. And finally, and I accept that. It's okay. It's okay for you to feel that. And you have to communicate that. Now, here's the clincher. Uh, you have to communicate that in a way that they actually believe these things. Because if you're just lying to get to your part, to where you get to voice you've missed this, and you're not going to be able to process that conflict in the healthy way that brings you closer together instead of driving you further apart. Because again, it's not the conflict that causes the most issues. The issues come from your recount of the conflict, the way you replay it over and over and over in your head, what it means. That's where the long-term damage to the relationship comes. So when you get to the understanding portion, it's so important to step into these places first, and then you rinse and repeat. You go back, you flip to the other partner, and you allow them to talk about you go back through the whole steps. Again, if you want every step of each of these, we have them laid out in very clear detail. It's me and my wife together on a live little webinar we were doing. And we break these things down in detail so you know what's a startup, what's a response, what's a body, and understanding. But for the purpose of this video, we're talking about understanding. And to get to this place, you go through one at a time. You understand her. You understand him. And then after you got that understanding, they believe that you're in their world. They can feel that you don't think they're crazy, right? And you've accepted them in that space. Now they're actually in a position to switch roles and the other spouse to go through the same steps to get to a place of, okay, you get where I'm at. Now you can move to that final fifth stage. We're not getting to there right now. Understanding is the tough one, though. It's so hard. It's so hard because it feels like I'm conceding. I don't feel that way. I don't believe the same. That's okay. In this space, it's important to have an agreement that even though I understand, even though that you totally get me, even though that I validate you, I also have different things, and you're going to give me the same love, same respect. This is the foundations, reprocessing a conflict to where you can land on an agreement, a compromise, et cetera, et cetera. Different time, different video. God bless you. Keep growing your marriages. Keep taking them to the next level.